Hey, welcome back to Anti-King. We are back again today with another horror you probably slept on. This time with the futuristic cyberpunk feminist horror comedy Spare Parts. It's a movie packed to the brim with girl power and punk aesthetics, high concept plot devices, and loads of practical gore. This is another movie that really took me by surprise. While it lived up to the expectations I had for it as a slimy ode to grindhouse films, the scale they were able to pull off on a very limited budget was really impressive. The story introduces a lot of fun takes on different genre tropes in horror and action, and given the perspective of an all-female lead cast, this movie managed to create something familiar while remaining entirely fresh. It's an outstanding watch, so without further ado, let's get into it. Spare Parts is a Canadian film released in May of this year, 2021 for future viewers. It was directed by Andrew Thomas Hunt and written by Thomas Murdoch, and follows a fantastic quintuplet of female badasses played by Michelle Argyris, Emily Alatalo, Kiriana Stanton, and Chelsea Muirhead. It follows a punk band, Miss 45, who is kidnapped and used in a nefarious plot. The inciting incident to this movie's plot is honestly the worst part of this movie. The movie begins at a punk show where a punk band is playing. Immediately, I've got to complain about something here, and it's the song. Don't get me wrong, the music is actually pretty great, as is all of the music throughout this movie. It's really a strength. That being said though, movies have a tendency to do this thing where the band performing sings a song that has their name as the chorus, and why? I know this happened occasionally in like really early punk, but even those are vastly outnumbered by their existence in movies. I don't know, it makes it feel less authentic, like we're watching a Scooby-Doo special or something. Anyways, Miss 45 is an all-female band, which isn't a genre, but is important for establishing subtext here. A few manly men in the audience decide to get on stage and get a little grabby with the band, resulting in the ladies here just beating the dog shit out of them. And this is my second and possibly last complaint about this movie. It's hard to watch this and not feel some level of secondhand embarrassment or something. There's other scenes like this in this movie that work, and work well, but this one doesn't. Watching for my first time, I wasn't sure if I was going to make it through the first 20 minutes or so, but it takes a turn for the much better soon, I promise. After the fight, we see the girls gathered around the back of their van. It's revealed that two of the girls, Cassie and Jill, are in a relationship, and Jill is expecting child. Aww. Amy looks on with some non-contextualized anger. As they're hanging out, they're approached by the hypermasculine bikers who incited the fight back at the show to talk some more trash. They're ran off by some guy named Sam, played eccentrically by Jason Rouse, but not before he lets Emma know he thinks she's the real talent behind the band, and that he pictures her in front of a crowd chanting her name one day. I'm not sure if it was intentional, but his off-kilter line deliveries remind me of older horror movies, who often had entirely inexperienced actors play major roles. The whole movie is a fever dream, as you'll come to see, but he plays a major role in making that so. The girls take off in their van, but only make it a short distance before encountering Sam again, who's trying his damnedest to run them off the road. They seem to have escaped before hitting a spike strip and becoming stranded. They seek help from a cop who drives them to a giant scrapyard. They're brought into a room to wait for their van to be repaired as Emma receives a call from her boyfriend. Suddenly, the room they're in fills with exhaust and they're rendered unconscious. Emma, who is outside the room, is the last to go via chloroform. The next scene to me would be the dividing line. While disturbing, this is where the film starts to pick up in quality. The next scene shows in graphic detail each of the girls having an arm removed. We're then introduced to Driller, played by Ryan Allen, who gives a stellar performance as the sort of top helper to our big bad the Emperor. He drags Amy by a chain collar to a scrapyard gladiator arena and fixes her missing arm with a machete prosthetic. She meets her friends there, and we're soon introduced to the festivities as the bright lights come up and the crowd roars. The Emperor gives the first of many speeches here, and man is this guy a solid actor. He's played by Julian Richings, who's probably best known for his work in different superhero movies, such as Man of Steel. He plays the charismatic leader of a blood cult here, and he reveals the premise by telling the girls that they'll be taking part in a ritualistic battle to the death, as the ground craves blood. The girls plead to go home, even attempting a play at sympathy by revealing Jill is pregnant. The Emperor assures them they would not let a woman fight while with child, by showing them the fetus they aborted while performing surgery to replace their limbs. God damn, that's dark. The resulting fight is fairly by the numbers, and its only major plot point is the death of Jill. With her lover and child both now dead at the hands of this cult, Cassie now has the motivation necessary for the redemption arc that she, spoiler alert, will not receive. We cut to their living quarters for the time being as we're given a hefty dose of awkward exposition via Sam, who's slowly grooming Emma into some weird Stockholm syndrome before we cut to Driller helping the girls to a training montage. We get dueling footage of the girls getting more and more prepared for their next go-around, and the Emperor sitting on his laurels getting HJs in the bathtub. What the fuck was that scene? Before we go any further, I wanted to mention the music. This is the second time in recent memory that a low-budget horror movie's music has blown me away. And while doing research for this video, I found out that both times were under the supervision of former Alexis on Fire guitarist, Wade McNeil. I first talked about Wade in the very first episode of this series, covering random acts of violence. And while these are just 2 of his 4 total credited assignments, he's instantly vaulted himself into the discussion of best horror music composers currently doing it, in my mind. I really dig the stuff he does, and I hope to see a ton more. The day of the next fight, Amy is fixed with some weird special battle axe, gifted by a steadily growing creepier Sam. The Emperor gives an impassioned speech once again before revealing the girl's opponent this time would be the bikers from the bar? Huh? How does that make sense? How did they get there? And they haven't been training this whole time? Wouldn't they just get washed like immediately? Regardless, we enter into a well choreographed fight sequence between the 3 girls and the 3 bikers, which ultimately ends in the girls' victory after some pretty gnarly kills. We see sequences of Emma's boyfriend asking around town about her, saying she's missing and he's worried about her. Eventually, he stumbles into the same cop that the girls did and is led into the scrapyard. While training with Driller, Amy weaponizes her sexuality literally and seduces Driller, but only as an example of how easily she could kill him. But I mean, hey, at least he got to Driller. Like Driller? Driller, I hardly... Sam shows up in a stupid shirt while being weirdly jealous and possessive before giving her an arm chainsaw and challenging her to a duel, as one does. He returns with a welder's mask on and makes short work of him, shoving the chainsaw through his torso. She takes off the mask to reveal that it wasn't Sam, but rather Cassie's boyfriend, and Sam had thrown a massive wrench into their camaraderie, or strengthened it behind the hatred of a common enemy. Who knows? Shortly after, the Emperor treats the girls to dinner and a show, a setup that looks like some kind of scrapyard medieval times. It's here that we're introduced to the girls' next and final opponents, who are definitive world beaters in this sport. They go by the names of Mace, Flame, and Arrow to match their weapons. They absolutely annihilate their fodder opponents, troubling the girls. Hell, Cassie is so mad she throws a fork that somehow sticks in the wrong side of the Emperor's face. I mean, seriously, did they put the prosthetic on the wrong side of the face and just decide to roll with it? What happened here? They're later led on a hunt through a maze of junkyard vehicles on a search for Cassie, who they find tied up with her face skinned in the back seat of an SUV. Mace and Flame show up and eventually torch the car with her inside, leaving them 1 short of the 3 needed for the tournament. This is another complaint of mine, although kinda nitpicky. Why introduce her love life, her baby, her demise, if not to redeem her? I don't know if this was just them subverting expectations, and I see what it eventually opens up room for in the plot, but it just makes both her and Jill's character feel real unnecessary. Anyways, this opens the door for a scene in which Sam, Driller, and the Emperor all discuss how to remedy this situation. They decide to allow Driller to fight alongside Amy and Emma, and his reputation is impressive, being the only person in this tournament to have earned his freedom, which is weird because why is he still here? Another well choreographed fight scene kicks off and ends with some pretty dope chainsaw kills. The Emperor, however, visibly upset with the results, decides that they must face more opponents. This upsets his HJ assistant, who is a deep believer in ritual, and basically everyone's turned on him by the point he decides to make the 2 girls fight each other. Amy puts her weapon down and refuses to fight, resigned to her fate of dying at her friend's hands. Emma charges in for the kill and jumps right over her and pulls the Emperor off his platform, where Amy gives him the old chainsaw decapitation treatment before being shot in the face by a cop, which, by the way, what a cop thing to do. Emma finally faces down her groomer Sam, and the movie cuts to black as she swings the axe down on him, while the crowd chants her name. I rank these movies on tension, kills, acting, direction, score, and plot. Not in that order. Stop making me say this. Go watch the other videos. The movie is pretty high octane and even borders on action at times, so I wouldn't exactly call this a tense movie. It does occasionally, however, fairly well. You guys know by now that practical gore effects get me going, and this movie is chock full of them. The surgery scene, the motorcycle face skinning, the chainsaw face off, the decapitation as a capper. Hard to beat, honestly. I guess my only complaint is volume, really. I'm literally only docking a point because of the first 20 minutes or so of the movie. I'm not sure what happened between the first part and the last, or if that was some intentional tone shift, but it's a noticeable difference. The direction is solid, if unspectacular. The shot selection is killer in parts, but the lighting throughout is incredibly inconsistent. Wade McNeil does it again, man. Easily my favorite part of this movie. The score features a lot of rock arrangements, but much like Random Acts of Violence, features just the right electronic twinges in just the right spots. Like I said before, I think the story is outstanding. Their execution of those ideas was also fantastic, and their fresh perspective on familiar action and horror tropes was incredibly well thought out. That being said, I had to dock points for things like setting up Cassie for a satisfying redemption arc, only to have her die faceless and scared before even getting to the fight. Also, the emotions that the scenes with Emma's boyfriend were supposed to drum up didn't. Alright, so 46 out of 60 equals out to a 77%, which is misleading as the lack of tension dragged that number down quite a bit. This movie is a full acceleration trip through a fever dream, and I enjoyed every last minute of it. Thanks for watching this video. Please like and subscribe if you haven't yet. In a couple of days, I'm doing Tusk, and man am I excited, it's one of my all-time favorites. Next week, I'm doing another one of my all-time favorites with We Are Still Here, before returning to Forgotten 80s Gems with Chopping Mall, and ending the week on my Melancholia video essay. Follow me on social media too, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all of it. I'm not hard to find. Anyways, until next time, stay safe.